When the James Webb Space Telescope captures light from the edge of observable space, astronomers discover something that shouldn't exist. A black hole, massive and ancient, lurking in a region of space where the first galaxies were just beginning to form. But the numbers don't add up. This black hole is older than the galaxies themselves, older than the stars, perhaps older than time as we understand it. Dr. Sarah Chen and her team at NASA thought they were making the discovery of the century. They had no idea they were opening a door that was never meant to be opened. What they found wasn't just breaking the laws of physics. It was watching them back. Could this ancient anomaly hold the answer to creation itself, or will it reveal something far more terrifying? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning air at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center carried the familiar scent of coffee and possibility. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at her office window, watching the sun paint the Maryland sky in shades of amber and rose. At 58, she had seen thousands of such dawns, but each one still held a quiet promise. Her reflection in the glass showed silver threading through dark hair, lines around eyes that had spent decades peering into the cosmos, and the particular expression of someone who had learned that patience and wonder were not opposites, but partners. She turned from the window to the photographs on her desk. Tom smiled back at her from a frame beside her coffee mug, frozen in time at their favorite beach in the Outer Banks. 5 years gone, and still she reached for the phone to call him when something interesting happened. Old habits, she thought, die harder than old astronomers. The leather-bound observation log lay open beside her keyboard, its pages filled with 30 years of handwritten notes. She had started keeping it her first week at Goddard, back when Reagan was president and the Hubble was still being assembled. Tom had given her the journal, inscribed with a simple message, "For all the things you'll see that no one has seen before." She ran her fingers over the worn cover, thinking about all the discoveries recorded there, all the questions that had led to more questions. A knock at the door interrupted her reverie. Dr. Marcus Webb entered without waiting for an answer, carrying 2 steaming mugs. At 73, Marcus moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had made peace with his body's limitations, but not with his mind's curiosity. He had been Sarah's mentor when she first arrived at Goddard, fresh out of graduate school and burning with ambition. "You're here early?" he said, settling into the worn leather chair across from her desk. "I'm always here early, Marcus. You're the one who's supposed to be easing into retirement." He chuckled, a sound like distant thunder. "Retirement is just death's waiting room. I'll ease into it when I'm done looking up." He gestured toward the window, where the sky was brightening. "Besides, Yuki sent me a message last night. Said the latest deep field data came in, and there's something odd in the spectroscopy." Sarah felt the familiar flutter in her chest. The one that never quite went away, no matter how many times she reviewed telescope data. Odd how? She wouldn't say over email. You know how she is about spoilers. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the facility come to life below. Sarah had worked with Marcus long enough to know when he had something on his mind. Finally he spoke. "Emma called me yesterday." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Did she? She's worried about you, Sarah. Says you haven't visited in 3 months. Says Michael asks about his grandmother. I've been busy. The JWST data analysis doesn't pause for family dinners." Marcus fixed her with the look that had made graduate students squirm for 4 decades. Tom wouldn't have wanted this. Tom understood. He was the same way. Tom learned balance. Eventually, that's what you two were going to do together, remember? After retirement, travel, spend time with Emma and the grandkids. Sarah stood and walked back to the window, her shoulders rigid. And then he had an aneurysm at his desk, reviewing data from Kepler. "So much for balance." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. They had circled this conversation before, like binary stars locked in orbit around each other's grief. The moment broke when Dr. Yuki Tanaka burst through the door, her laptop tucked under one arm and her eyes bright with excitement. At 45, Yuki still moved with the energy of a grad student, though her expertise in spectroscopic analysis had made her one of the most sought-after researchers in the field. "You need to see this," she said, not bothering with greetings. She set her laptop on Sarah's desk and pulled up a series of graphs and images. This came in from the latest JWST Deep Field Survey. We were looking at the CMB shadow regions, mapping the earliest galaxy formations. Sarah leaned forward, her practiced eye scanning the data. "What am I looking at?" "That!" Yuki pointed to a spectral signature that seemed to shimmer at the edge of the visible range. "The redshift is off the charts. I ran it through every calibration protocol we have. No errors, no glitches." Marcus moved to stand beside Sarah, his coffee forgotten. "What's the calculated distance?" "That's just it," Yuki said, her voice dropping. "The distance matches the era of first galaxy formation, about 13.4 billion light-years. But the mass signature suggests a supermassive black hole." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "How massive?" 4 billion solar masses, maybe more." The room fell silent. Sarah straightened slowly, her mind racing through the implications. Supermassive black holes took time to form, time to grow by consuming matter and merging with other black holes. The universe's first galaxies had barely begun to coalesce 13.4 billion years ago. There shouldn't have been time for a black hole of that size to exist. "Run it again," she said quietly. "Every verification protocol. Check the telescope calibration. Check the data transmission. Check everything." Yuki nodded, already moving toward the door. "I'll call James in. He can run diagnostics on the telescope systems." As Yuki left, Marcus let out a long breath. "If this is real, Sarah, I know. It would change everything we understand about cosmic evolution. I know." He studied her face, seeing the hunger there, the same expression she'd worn as a young researcher chasing her first major discovery. "It would also consume you." Sarah picked up Tom's photograph, running her thumb along the frame. "Some things are worth being consumed by." Later that morning, the team assembled in Conference Room 3, the one they always used for preliminary findings. James Rivera, their systems engineer, had spent the early hours running diagnostics on the James Webb Telescope itself. At 35, he represented the younger generation at Goddard, brilliant and methodical, with a gift for troubleshooting that bordered on supernatural. "The telescope is functioning perfectly," he reported, pulling up schematics on the main screen. "No calibration drift, no instrumental artifacts, no data corruption in transmission. Whatever you're seeing, it's real signal, not noise." Sarah stood at the head of the table, the data displayed behind her like an accusation against established physics. "Yuki, walk us through the spectroscopy." For the next hour, they dissected the data from every angle. The black hole's light signature had traveled for over 13 billion years to reach them, carrying information encoded in its spectrum. Everything pointed to the same impossible conclusion. This object existed at a time when it shouldn't have been possible. Marcus raised the question they were all thinking. Could we be looking at something else? Some phenomenon that mimics a black hole signature? "Like what?" Yuki asked. "We've considered every alternative. The gravitational lensing matches, the X-ray emissions match, the mass calculations match. It's a supermassive black hole, Marcus. It's just impossibly old." James leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming on the table. "What if it's not old? What if it's from somewhere else?" They all turned to look at him. "I mean, what if it didn't form in our universe's timeline? What if it's a remnant from before?" And Sarah felt something cold trace down her spine. "Before what?" "Before the Big Bang. If the cyclic universe models are correct, if our universe formed from the collapse of a previous one, maybe some structures survived the transition." The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. This time, they weren't just contemplating an anomaly. They were staring into the abyss of cosmology itself, at questions that bordered on the philosophical. "That's speculation," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "All of this is speculation until we verify it," Sarah said. She looked at each of them in turn. "I'm putting in a request for extended observation time. We need to map this thing completely, understand its structure, its behavior. James, I want continuous monitoring for any changes in position or emissions. Yuki, expand the spectroscopic analysis. Look for any patterns we might have missed. As the meeting broke up, Sarah stood alone at the window, watching clouds drift across the sky. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Mom, Michael's recital is Thursday at 7. Please try to come." She typed a response, hesitated, then deleted it. She would try. She always tried. But standing there, thinking about the impossible thing they had found at the edge of space and time, she knew that trying might not be enough. That night, alone in her office with only the glow of her computer screen for company, Sarah opened her observation log to a fresh page. Her pen hovered over the paper for a long moment before she began to write. Day 1 of the anomaly. We have found something that shouldn't exist. A black hole older than the stars, lurking at the boundary of observable space. Marcus thinks it will consume me. Emma thinks I've already been consumed by something else. Maybe they're both right. But Tom used to say that some questions are so important, they're worth your whole life to answer. Today I think we found one of those questions. She paused, then added one more line. The strangest thing is not that it exists. The strangest thing is that looking at the data, studying its light signature, I have the uncanny feeling that it's looking back. Sarah closed the observation log and leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the day settle into her bones. Through the window, the parking lot lights cast long shadows across empty spaces. Most of the facility had gone home hours ago, back to families and dinners and normal lives that didn't revolve around light that had traveled for eons. She pulled up the image again on her screen. The black hole itself was invisible, of course, a void where nothing escaped. But the matter swirling around it, superheated to millions of degrees as it spiraled toward oblivion, created a ghostly ring of light. In false color, it glowed blue-white against the velvet blackness of deep space, beautiful and terrible at once. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. "Hi, sweetheart." Emma's voice came through tired but warm. "Mom, you're still at work." "Just finishing up some analysis. It's almost midnight." "Is it? I didn't notice." Sarah glanced at the clock, surprised. Time had a way of dissolving when she was deep in data. "You never do." Emma paused, and Sarah could hear Michael's voice in the background asking something about homework. "Listen, Mom, I know you're busy. I know your work is important. But Michael really wants you there on Thursday." "I'll be there," Sarah said, and meant it in the moment. "You said that last time. And the time before. This is different. It's always different." Dad understood that. "I understand that. But Michael is 7 years old. And all he understands is that his grandmother is never there." Sarah felt the familiar ache in her chest, the one that came from being pulled in 2 directions by equally strong forces. "I'm sorry. I know you are. That's what makes it harder." Emma's voice softened. "I love you, Mom, but loving someone and having them present are different things." Dad knew that too, eventually. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the darkness, listening to the hum of computers and the distant sound of the building's ventilation system. She thought about Tom, about the years they had spent chasing discoveries together, and the years they had planned to spend doing something else. Travel, grandchildren, a garden of all things. Tom had wanted to grow tomatoes. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a photo from 2 years before Emma was born. She and Tom standing in front of the Hubble Space Telescope mock-up at the museum, both of them young and bright-eyed, and certain that the universe would give up its secrets if they just looked hard enough. "What would you make of this, Tom?" she whispered to the empty room. "A black hole that breaks all the rules. What would you say?" But she knew what he would say. He would say the same thing he always said when they found something extraordinary. "Let's see where it leads." The next morning brought the team back together, this time with coffee and bagels from the cafeteria. Marcus arrived with dark circles under his eyes, and Sarah suspected he had been up as late as she had, running his own calculations. "I contacted Elena Volkov at MIT, Sarah announced as they settled around the table. "She has access to independent spectroscopic equipment. I'm sending her our data for verification. Good, Marcus said. The more eyes on this, the better. We need to be absolutely certain before we take this to the review board. Yuki pulled up a new set of graphs. I ran the expanded analysis overnight. The light signature has structure. It's not random noise. There's a pattern in the wavelengths. James leaned forward, studying the peaks and valleys on the screen. What kind of pattern? That's what I can't figure out. It's almost like a pulse, but irregular. It repeats, but not at consistent intervals. Sarah felt her skin prickle. Could it be accretion disk instability? That was my first thought, but the math doesn't work. The intervals are too precise in some ways, and too random in others. It's like... Yuki paused, searching for words. It's like listening to something that's trying to sound random, but isn't quite managing it. Marcus set down his coffee slowly. You're saying it looks artificial. I'm saying it looks structured. Whether that structure is natural or not, I can't determine yet. The room fell into an uneasy silence. They were scientists, trained to look for natural explanations before invoking extraordinary ones. But extraordinary data sometimes demanded extraordinary consideration. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Sarah said firmly. We document what we see. We analyze it rigorously. We follow the evidence wherever it leads. But we don't speculate beyond what the data supports. James nodded, but his expression remained troubled. Sarah, if this thing is as old as the data suggests, and if there's structure in its emissions, we might need to consider possibilities that go beyond standard astrophysics. One step at a time, she replied. But even as she said it, she felt the familiar pull of the unknown, the gravity well of discovery that had shaped her entire life. This was different from anything she had encountered before, and some instinct told her that once they started down this path, there would be no turning back. Let's get to work, she said. We have a lot to figure out. The week that followed established a rhythm that would become familiar. Early mornings reviewing overnight data. Long afternoons, cross-referencing measurements and running simulations. Late evenings when the facility grew quiet and only the dedicated remained, hunched over workstations, chasing phantoms of light that had traveled longer than human civilization had existed. Elena Volkov called on the fourth day. Sarah put her on speaker so the team could hear. I don't believe it. Elena's voice came through with her characteristic Russian directness. But I have verified it 3 times. Your data is correct. Spectroscopic signature matches supermassive black hole. Age calculation matches early universe formation period. This object should not exist, but it does. Thank you, Elena, Sarah said, feeling both vindicated and unsettled. There is something else, Elena continued. I ran extended observation last night using our equipment at MIT, the emission pattern Yuki identified. I found similar structure in adjacent regions of the spectrum. It extends into wavelengths your initial scan did not cover. Yuki sat up straighter. What kind of structure? Repeating sequences, mathematical progressions. Sarah, I have been studying cosmic phenomena for 30 years. I have never seen anything like this from a natural source. After the call ended, the team sat in silence. Finally, James spoke. We need to bring this to the review board. This is beyond preliminary findings now. Marcus shook his head slowly. The moment we do that, everything changes. There will be committees, bureaucracy, other institutions demanding access to the data, the press getting wind of it. And that's a problem because, James asked, because we don't understand what we're looking at yet, Sarah said. If we go public with half-formed theories, we risk either being dismissed as crackpots or starting a panic. We need more time. How much time? Yuki asked. Sarah looked at the data displayed on the screens around them, at the impossible thing that had somehow found its way into their instruments. I don't know. But I know we need to be absolutely certain of what we're reporting before we report it. That afternoon, Sarah forced herself to leave the facility early. She drove to Emma's house, a modest colonial in Silver Spring, with a tire swing in the front yard and chalk drawings on the driveway. Michael's handiwork she recognized? The boy had inherited the family's eye for patterns. Emma answered the door with surprise evident on her face. Mom, you're here. I said I would try. You did. Emma stepped aside to let her in. Michael's doing homework. He'll be thrilled. They sat in the kitchen while Michael worked on math problems at the table, his tongue poking out in concentration. Sarah helped him with a particularly tricky long division problem, guiding him through the logic rather than giving him the answer. It reminded her of teaching Emma the same way, years ago, back when the biggest mysteries in life were arithmetic and why the sky was blue.
"Grandma, are you coming to my recital?"
Michael asked, looking up with Tom's eyes. "I'm going to try very hard to be there." "That means no," he said matter-of-factly, returning to his homework. Sarah felt the words like a physical blow. Emma touched her arm gently. "He doesn't mean it like that." "Yes, he does. And he's right to." Sarah watched her grandson work, seeing in him the same intensity she had brought to her own work, the same focus. "I want to be there, Em, I really do. I know. But wanting and doing are different things." After dinner, Sarah sat with Michael and read him a book about space, about stars and planets and the vast distances between things. He asked questions that showed he had been thinking about the universe in ways most 7-year-olds didn't. "Grandma, if light takes so long to travel, does that mean when we look at stars we're looking at the past?" "That's exactly right." "Very good. So the stars might not even be there anymore?" "Some of them, yes. We're seeing them as they were, not as they are." He thought about this for a while. "That's sad." "Why sad?" "Because they're gone, but we don't know it yet. We keep looking at them like they're still there." Sarah pulled him closer. "That's a very wise observation. But here's something to remember. Just because something is in the past doesn't mean it isn't real. The light from those stars still exists. It traveled all that way to reach us. That journey matters. The light matters. Even if the star is gone." Even then, driving home that night, Sarah thought about Michael's question, about light traveling through the void, about things that were gone but whose presence still lingered, still mattered. She thought about Tom, about the black hole at the edge of space, sending its structured signals across billions of years. What was it trying to say? And perhaps more importantly, why did she feel so certain it was trying to say anything at all? Back at her apartment, she opened her observation log again. Day 7. Elena has confirmed our findings. The pattern is real. James wants to go to the review board. He's probably right, but I find myself hesitating and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's caution. Maybe it's something else. Tonight, my grandson asked me about looking at dead stars. He asked if it made me sad to know they were gone. I told him the light still mattered, that the journey mattered. I think I was trying to convince myself as much as him. She paused, pen hovering over paper. Tom, if you can hear me somehow, I could really use your counsel right now. We've found something that doesn't fit into any framework we have. In part of me, a part I don't want to admit, feels like it's been waiting for us, like it wants to be found. She closed the journal and went to bed, but sleep was elusive. In her dreams, she stood at the edge of a vast darkness, and from within that darkness, something ancient turned its attention toward her. The anomaly announced itself at 3:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in late October. Sarah was home, actually home and in bed, when her phone began buzzing with the insistence of something that could not wait. She grabbed it, seeing James's name on the screen. "Sarah, you need to get here now." She was dressed and in her car within 10 minutes, making the pre-dawn drive to Goddard with her heart hammering against her ribs. The facility's parking lot held more cars than it should at this hour. Through the windows of the main building, she could see lights blazing in multiple offices. James met her at the entrance, his hair standing up in different directions, as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. The overnight monitoring system flagged something. "Sarah, the object moved." "Moved how?" "Changed position, not much. Just 0.003 arcseconds." But it changed. They hurried through the corridors to the observation room where Yuki was already stationed, surrounded by displays showing data streams and astronomical imagery. Marcus arrived moments later, moving as quickly as his age allowed. "Show me," Sarah commanded. Yuki pulled up a comparison view. 2 images of the same region of space, taken 12 hours apart. In the second image, the characteristic light signature of the black hole had shifted slightly against the background of even more distant galaxies. "I've checked everything," Yuki said, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Telescope positioning, Earth's rotation, atmospheric refraction, instrumental drift. None of it accounts for this. The object itself moved." Sarah felt her mouth go dry. Black holes moved, of course. They orbited galactic centers, drifted through space. But this one was so distant that any movement should have been imperceptible across human timescales. Yet here it was, having shifted position in the span of half a day. "What's the calculated velocity?" Marcus asked. James pulled up his calculations. "If we assume the distance is accurate and the movement is real, it would be traveling at approximately 0.3% the speed of light." "That's impossible," Sarah breathed. "Nothing that massive moves that fast without something accelerating it, unless it's not moving toward us or away from us," Yuki said slowly. "What if it's moving perpendicular to our line of sight?" They ran the calculations again, factoring in different trajectories. No matter how they analyzed it, the conclusion remained the same. The object was moving at a velocity that defied easy explanation. "We need to call an emergency meeting," Marcus said. "This changes everything." By 8 in the morning, they had assembled a larger group. Senior researchers, department heads, specialists in gravitational physics and cosmology. Sarah stood at the head of the conference table, feeling the weight of their attention as she walked them through the findings. Dr. David Park, the assistant administrator for NASA's Science Mission Directorate, sat at the far end of the table. He was a political animal, skilled at navigating the bureaucratic waters that Sarah found exhausting. His expression remained carefully neutral as she presented the data. "So what you're telling us," Park said when she finished, "is that you've found an object that shouldn't exist, that appears to be older than the known universe allows, and that is now moving in ways that don't make sense. That's an oversimplification, but essentially, yes. And you've verified this how?" "Multiple independent observations, cross-verification with MIT, every calibration protocol we have." Park leaned back in his chair. "Dr. Chen, I don't need to tell you how extraordinary these claims are. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence." "We have the evidence," Yuki interjected. "It's all in the data. Data can be misinterpreted. Instruments can malfunction. There are any number of mundane explanations that need to be ruled out before we jump to conclusions that would rewrite physics textbooks." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "We're not jumping to conclusions. We're following the evidence, then follow it more carefully. Run more tests. Bring in outside experts. But do not, under any circumstances, take this outside this room until we're absolutely certain of what we're looking at." Park stood, signaling the end of the discussion. "Is that understood?" The room remained silent. Sarah met Park's gaze steadily. "We'll continue the analysis." "Good. And Dr. Chen, I'd like to have a word with you privately." After the others filed out, Park closed the door and turned to face her. His professional mask slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. "I know your reputation, Sarah. I know you're brilliant, dedicated, and that you don't care much for the political side of science. But this is bigger than your curiosity or your career. If word of this leaks prematurely, we'll have every crackpot and conspiracy theorist in the country demanding answers we don't have. So, we should suppress the data. I'm saying we should be responsible with it. There are protocols for a reason. Tom used to say that protocols are just organized cowardice." Park's expression hardened. "Tom isn't here anymore, you are. And if you want to continue this research, you'll do it by the book. Otherwise, you'll find someone who will." After he left, Sarah stood alone in the conference room, her hands trembling with frustration and something that felt uncomfortably like fear. Through the window, she could see the rest of her team gathered in the hallway, waiting for her. She pulled out her phone and called Emma. "Mom, is everything okay?" "I'm not going to make the recital on Thursday." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. "I'm sorry. Something's come up at work." "Something always comes up at work. Emma, please. This is important. So is your grandson." But I guess he doesn't rate against the mysteries of the universe. Emma's voice was tired rather than angry, which somehow made it worse. I love you, Mom, but I'm done competing with dead stars for your attention. The call ended. Sarah stood there, phone in hand, feeling the gulf between what she wanted and what she chose widening into something that might never be bridged. The team reconvened in Sarah's office, away from the larger facility and its bureaucratic oversight. Marcus settled into his usual chair with a heavy sigh. Park's scared, he said bluntly. And when administrators get scared, they get cautious. Too cautious, James muttered. We have verification. We have data. We have something that could fundamentally change our understanding of the cosmos, and he wants us to sit on it. Sarah stood at the window, watching clouds drift across the afternoon sky. He's not entirely wrong. If we announce this prematurely and we've made a mistake, it damages all of our credibility. It damages the program. And if we wait too long, someone else might find it, Yuki pointed out. We're not the only ones with access to JWST data. The observations are supposed to be proprietary for a year, but leaks happen. So what do we do? James asked, looking at Sarah. She turned from the window. We do exactly what Park asked. We verify, triple-check, bring in outside experts. But we do it quickly. We work around the clock if we have to. I want this nailed down so tightly that no one can question it. And then? Marcus asked. And then we publish. Through proper channels, following every protocol. We give Park no reason to shut us down. Over the next 72 hours, they barely slept. The data packet containing the original discovery sat at the center of their investigation like a small sun, everything else orbiting around it. They designated it Data Packet JW7749X and treated it with the reverence usually reserved for holy relics. Elena Volkov flew in from Boston, bringing her own equipment and her sharp eye for finding flaws in methodology. She spent an entire day reviewing their analysis, looking for any mistakes, any oversights, any reason to doubt the conclusions. You are correct, she announced finally, her accent thickening with fatigue. Object is real. Movement is real. Age calculation is correct within margin of error. I do not understand how this is possible, but I cannot find fault with your data. Sarah felt relief and dread in equal measure. Thank you, Elena. Do not thank me yet. This discovery will make your life very complicated. She was already right. Despite Park's orders for secrecy, word had begun to spread through the scientific community. Colleagues from other institutions were calling, asking careful questions. The International Astronomical Union had sent a formal inquiry. And someone, Sarah suspected one of the junior researchers who had been at the initial meeting, had leaked something to the press. The first article appeared in a fringe science blog, easily dismissed as speculation. But it planted a seed. Within days, more legitimate outlets were asking questions. NASA's Public Affairs Office was fielding calls. Marcus brought her a printout of an article from a popular astronomy magazine. The headline read, "Has NASA found evidence of pre-Big Bang physics?" "We're losing control of the narrative," he said. Sarah crumpled the paper. "We never had control. The moment we saw that first image, the path was set. That night, alone in her apartment, Sarah couldn't settle. She paced from room to room, her mind churning through possibilities. The object was real. Its impossible age was real. Its movement was real. But what did it mean? She opened her observation log to a fresh page. Day 12 since initial discovery. We've verified everything we can verify. The date is solid. Park wants to keep it contained, but the information is already leaking out. I can feel the moment approaching when this stops being our discovery and becomes the world's mystery. She paused, pen poised above paper. But that's not what's keeping me awake. What keeps me awake is the pattern Yuki found in the emissions, the structure that Elena confirmed. Every time I look at it, I see something that feels deliberate. James thinks I'm projecting meaning onto random data. Maybe he's right. Or maybe the universe is stranger than any of us imagined. She set down the pen and walked to her window. Somewhere out there, beyond the light pollution and the atmosphere, beyond the solar system and the galaxy and the vast gulfs between clusters of galaxies, something ancient was moving through the darkness. Something that had existed before existence itself should have allowed it. And somewhere deep in her bones, Sarah felt certain it was moving toward them. The Red Shift Journal began as a simple shared document, a place for the team to log their attempts at explaining the anomaly. Within a week, it had become a testament to their growing confusion. Theory after theory, crossed out or marked with question marks. Conventional explanations crumbling under the weight of evidence that refused to conform. Sarah found herself staring at it during a late-night session in the third week of November, scrolling through pages of failed hypotheses. Gravitational lensing, instrumental artifact, data corruption, temporal anomaly, each one examined, tested, and discarded. "We're missing something," she muttered to herself. "We're missing sleep," Yuki replied from across the room. She had been running simulations for 6 hours straight, her eyes red-rimmed and determined. "But I think I found something in the secondary data." Sarah moved to stand behind Yuki's chair, watching as she pulled up a new graph. "What am I looking at?" "Gravitational wave patterns. Very faint, almost at the noise threshold. But they're there, and they correlate with the visible spectrum emissions. The black hole is producing gravitational waves? Everything with mass produces gravitational waves if it's moving. But these aren't random. They have structure. Mathematical progressions." Yuki highlighted specific peaks in the data. "See Fibonacci sequence. Then prime numbers. Then something I don't recognize, but it's definitely structured." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "And how long has this been in the data?" "Since the beginning. We just weren't looking at the right wavelengths." Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking older than he had a month ago. The stress was wearing on all of them, but especially on him. "I just got off the phone with Park. He wants a status update tomorrow morning. He's bringing some people from the Pentagon." "The Pentagon?" James looked up from his workstation. "Why?" "Because when you find something that might rewrite physics, the military wants to know if it can be weaponized." The meeting the next morning took place in a secure conference room that Sarah had only been in twice before. Park arrived with 2 men in suits who introduced themselves with first names only. Marcus was there and Elena, but Yuki and James had been excluded. "Too junior," Park had explained. Sarah suspected it was because they were more likely to ask uncomfortable questions. One of the Pentagon representatives, a man who had introduced himself as Robert, pulled up a classified presentation on the secure screen. "We've been monitoring unusual gravitational disturbances over the past 2 weeks. Minor fluctuations in satellite orbits. Nothing major, but consistent and coming from the direction of your anomaly." Sarah leaned forward. "That's impossible." "The object is billions of light years away. Its gravitational influence shouldn't reach us at all. And yet..." Robert clicked through several slides showing orbital data from multiple satellites. The patterns were clear. Small but measurable perturbations, all originating from the same point in space. "This doesn't make sense," Elena said. "Gravity propagates at speed of light. Any effect from that distance would take billions of years to reach us." The second Pentagon representative, who had given her name as Michelle, spoke up. "Unless the gravity isn't coming from the object's current position. What if it's coming from somewhere else? Some kind of corridor or connection?" Sarah felt cold certainty settle over her. "You think it's a wormhole? We think it's something we don't have a category for yet. But yes, that's one possibility we're considering." Park cleared his throat. "Which is why this stays classified for now. If there's even a chance this thing represents some kind of tunnel through space-time, we need to understand it before anyone else does." "This isn't about national security," Sarah said sharply. "This is about human knowledge." "It's about both," Robert replied calmly. "Dr. Chen, we're not trying to suppress your research. We're trying to make sure you have the resources and protection you need to continue it safely." After the meeting, Sarah found Marcus waiting for her in the hallway. He looked troubled. "In 1987, he said quietly, I was working on data from the Arecibo telescope. We picked up a signal. Brief, structured, impossible to explain. I wanted to publish. My superiors told me to forget about it, that it was probably interference. I didn't forget, Sarah. I still have the data, and it looked a lot like what you're seeing now. Sarah stared at him. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because I convinced myself they were right, that I was seeing patterns where none existed, that the universe wasn't that strange. He met her eyes. Don't make my mistake. Don't let them convince you to look away. That evening, Sarah broke her promise to herself and drove to Emma's house unannounced. Her daughter answered the door with Michael in tow, both of them in pajamas. Mom, what are you doing here? I missed the recital. I want to make it up to him. Emma's expression softened slightly. It's almost bedtime. Please, just a few minutes. She sat with Michael in the living room and listened to him play the piece he had performed at the recital. A simple melody, but executed with the careful precision of a child who took his practice seriously. When he finished, she applauded. That was beautiful, Michael. Grandma, why do you always miss things? The question was asked with such guileless honesty that Sarah felt her heart break a little. Because I'm trying to understand something very big and very important. More important than me. No, nothing is more important than you. But sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things, even when we don't want to. Dad says you're looking at old stars that are already dead. Sarah glanced at Emma, who shrugged apologetically. I'm looking at something very far away that might help us understand where we came from. Where did we come from? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Michael thought about this, his face scrunched in concentration. If you figure it out, will you come to my next recital? I will, I promise. Emma walked her to the door. Don't make promises you can't keep, Mom. I'm trying, Em, I really am. I know, but trying isn't the same as doing. The gravitational disturbances grew worse over the following week. A communications satellite lost positioning for 3 minutes. A deep space probe suddenly accelerated slightly, then returned to normal velocity. The International Space Station reported unusual readings from their gravitational sensors. The team worked in a bubble of controlled chaos. James had taken over an entire wall of the lab, covering it with calculations and diagrams. Yuki ran simulations day and night, trying to model what could produce the observed effects. Elena extended her stay indefinitely, recognizing that this was the kind of discovery that happened once in a lifetime. If that. Sarah coordinated it all, feeling the weight of responsibility settling more heavily on her shoulders with each passing day. The Redshift Journal grew to over 200 pages of crossed-out theories and failed models. Every answer led to 10 more questions. On a grey Thursday morning, 3 weeks after the initial discovery, Sarah arrived to find Marcus sitting in her office, holding a printout. Someone leaked to the press, he said, handing her the paper. The article was from a major newspaper's science section. NASA scientists detect impossible object at edge of universe. The piece was carefully written, citing anonymous sources and hedging its claims, but the core facts were there. The anomaly, the age, the gravitational effects. Park is going to lose his mind, Sarah said. Park already lost his mind. He's called an emergency press conference for this afternoon. Says we're going public with a controlled statement before this turns into a circus. The press conference was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Sarah found herself standing in the green room with Park, Marcus, and a NASA public affairs officer who was frantically prepping talking points. Keep it vague, Park instructed. Acknowledge the discovery, but emphasize the preliminary nature of our findings. No speculation about what it might be or what it might mean. People are going to ask questions, Sarah pointed out. Let them ask. You don't have to answer. Stick to what we know for certain. The conference room was packed with reporters. Sarah stood at the podium, acutely aware of cameras and recording devices aimed at her like weapons. She read the prepared statement, describing the discovery in the driest possible terms. The questions came fast and hard. Dr. Chen, is this object older than the Big Bang? We don't know. The data suggests it existed during the earliest moments of the universe's formation, but exactly when it formed remains unclear. Could this rewrite our understanding of cosmology? Any significant discovery has the potential to expand our understanding. That's the nature of science. Are the gravitational effects a threat to Earth? No, the effects we've observed are extremely subtle and pose no danger. Is this evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence? Sarah paused. This was the question she had been dreading, the one Park had explicitly told her to deflect. But standing there, thinking about the patterns in the data, the structured emissions, the mathematical progressions, she found herself reluctant to lie outright. "We have no evidence of intelligence at this time," she said carefully. "Our focus is on understanding the physical properties of the object and its implications for cosmology." After the conference, Park pulled her aside. "That was too honest." I answered truthfully. "You left the door open for speculation. By tomorrow, we'll be flooded with conspiracy theories and demands for answers we don't have. Then maybe we should be working harder to get those answers instead of managing public perception." Park's jaw tightened. "You're off the project." The words hit like a physical blow. "What? You're too close to this. Your judgment is compromised. I'm bringing in Dr. Harrison from JPL to take over as principal investigator. You can't do that. This is my discovery. This is NASA's discovery. You're a NASA employee. And right now you're a liability." He softened slightly. "Take a few weeks. Get some perspective. Spend time with your family. When this settles down, we'll talk about your role going forward." Sarah stood frozen as Park walked away. Marcus appeared at her elbow. "He's wrong," Marcus said quietly. "He's the boss. Doesn't make him right. Come on. Let's get out of here." They drove to a diner Marcus favored, an old-fashioned place with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner for hours. Sarah stared at her untouched cup while Marcus worked his way through a piece of apple pie. "I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone," Marcus said. "When I was young, before you even born, I had a chance to be part of the team that first detected pulsars. But I was too cautious, too worried about being wrong. By the time I worked up the courage to advocate for my theory, someone else had published. I don't see how that helps me right now." "It doesn't. But it taught me something. The universe doesn't wait for us to be ready. It doesn't care about our career concerns or our fears. It just is. And sometimes we have to choose between being safe and being right." Sarah finally met his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Elena still has access to MIT's equipment. I'm saying Yuki and James are loyal to you, not to Park. I'm saying sometimes the most important work happens outside official channels. That's insubordination. That's science. Real science, not bureaucratic performance art." He pushed his plate aside and leaned forward. "Sarah, I'm 73 years old. I've spent my entire life studying the sky. I've made my peace with the fact that I'll probably die before we understand half of what's out there. But this might be the answer to questions we didn't even know how to ask yet. Don't let Park's cowardice steal that from you." Sarah picked up her coffee, found it lukewarm, and drank it anyway. "If we do this, if we continue without authorization, it could end all our careers. I told you, I'm 73. My career is measured in months, not years. Yuki and James are brilliant. They'll land on their feet. And you," he smiled, "you're too damn stubborn to let anyone keep you down for long. Emma will kill me. Emma loves you." "She'll understand eventually." Sarah set down the cup. Okay, let's see where this rabbit hole goes." They reconvened that night at Elena's hotel suite. The space was modest but functional, with a table covered in laptops and portable hard drives containing copies of all their data. Yuki and James arrived separately, both looking nervous but determined. "This is crazy," James said, but he was already setting up his equipment. "Crazy is walking away from the biggest discovery in human history because an administrator is scared," Yuki countered. Elena poured coffee from a hotel pot that had seen better days. "In Russia we have saying, the tallest nail gets hammered down, but sometimes you must be nail that refuses to bend." Sarah spread out printed copies of the Redshift Journal across the table. "We need to approach this systematically. We know what it isn't. Now we need to figure out what it is. Start with the gravitational effects, Marcus suggested. They're our biggest clue. James pulled up his calculations. The effects originate from the direction of the anomaly, but they're reaching us far too quickly. If we assume standard physics, the information would take billions of years to arrive. But it's arriving in real time, which suggests the information is taking a shortcut, Elena mused. Through what? Higher dimensions? Quantum entanglement on a cosmic scale? Or the anomaly isn't where we think it is, Sarah said slowly. What if the light we're seeing is ancient, billions of years old, but the object itself is much closer? How? Yuki asked. We calculated its distance using standard redshift measurements. Standard measurements that assume the object is moving away from us at a predictable rate based on cosmic expansion. But what if it's not following standard rules? Marcus leaned back, his eyes distant. A wormhole. If the object exists in two places simultaneously, or if it's projecting through space-time somehow, the light signature we see could be from its ancient origin point, while its gravitational influence comes from somewhere much nearer. They worked through the mathematics, building a theoretical framework that felt simultaneously elegant and insane. The coffee ran out. Dawn light began filtering through the hotel windows, and slowly a picture emerged. It's a bridge, Sarah whispered, staring at the equations. The anomaly isn't just an object. It's a connection point, a door between the universe as it was and the universe as it is. But a door to what? James asked. Before anyone could answer, Yuki's phone buzzed. She checked it and her face went pale. Oh no. What? She turned the phone to show them. A news alert. Anonymous NASA source claims alien signal detected from edge of universe. That's not what we said, Sarah protested. Doesn't matter. The story is out there now, and it's going to get worse. Elena pulled up several websites on her laptop, showing the news spreading across social media, conspiracy theory forums lighting up, religious groups issuing statements. We have maybe 24 hours before this becomes completely uncontrollable. Sarah felt the walls closing in. They had tried to be careful, tried to follow the rules, and now the situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. She thought about Michael's recital, about the promises she had broken, about Tom and his belief that some questions were worth everything. We publish, she said abruptly. Now, tonight, we put everything we have into a paper and submit it to nature. Full data, full analysis, all of it. Park will bury it, Marcus warned. He can try. But once it's submitted, it's on the record. Other scientists can request the data. It becomes part of the academic conversation instead of a government secret. That's career suicide, James said, but he didn't sound like he was disagreeing. Maybe, but it's the right thing to do. They worked through the day and into the next night, crafting a paper that laid out every observation, every measurement, every theory they had developed. Sarah's hands shook as she typed the conclusion. We have observed an object that appears to violate known principles of cosmic evolution and space-time physics. While we cannot explain its existence through conventional models, we believe it represents evidence of phenomena beyond current scientific understanding. Further observation and analysis are urgently needed. The implications for cosmology, physics, and our understanding of the universe's origin and structure are profound. At 3 a.m, Sarah's finger hovered over the submit button. Once she pressed it, there would be no taking it back. Her career at NASA was probably over. Park would be furious. The scientific community would either embrace or ridicule them. Do it, Marcus said softly. She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a confirmation email appeared. The paper was in the system, awaiting peer review. The discovery was now part of the scientific record. Sarah leaned back in her chair, feeling simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. They had crossed the Rubicon. Whatever came next, they had done what scientists were supposed to do. They had followed the truth wherever it led. Now what? Yuki asked. Now we wait, Elena said. And we hope the universe forgives us for noticing it. Sarah checked her personal email and found 3 messages from Emma. She didn't open them. She wasn't ready yet to face what she had sacrificed for this moment. Instead, she pulled out her observation log and wrote a single line. Day 23. We have committed ourselves. The door is open. God help us if something walks through. The Hawking manuscript arrived like a message from beyond the grave. Elena found it while searching through MIT's archives of unpublished papers, looking for any theoretical framework that might explain what they were observing. The document was dated 2016, just 2 years before Hawking's death, and had never been submitted for publication. She called Sarah at 6 in the morning, her voice trembling with excitement. You need to see this. Stephen was thinking about this exact problem. Sarah drove to MIT that afternoon, officially on personal leave from NASA, but effectively exiled. The campus felt alien after the familiar halls of Goddard, but Elena's office was warm and cluttered in a way that reminded her of Marcus's workspace. The manuscript was 40 pages of dense mathematics and theoretical speculation. Sarah read it twice, her heart pounding harder with each paragraph. Hawking had been exploring the possibility of what he called observer-dependent reality fields near the event horizons of ancient black holes. The theory suggested that consciousness itself might interact with extreme gravitational fields in ways that affected the observed properties of space-time. He's describing a feedback loop, Sarah breathed. The act of observation changes what's being observed, but at a fundamental physical level. And if the observer is observing something that exists outside normal time, Elena continued, then the observation itself might create a connection across temporal boundaries. This is science fiction. It was science fiction. Now we have data that suggests it might be science fact. That same week, the gravitational disturbances escalated. A Mars probe lost contact for 90 seconds. Earth's rotation slowed by 0.001 seconds. The changes were minute but measurable, and they were accelerating. The scientific community was fracturing. Half dismissed the findings as misinterpreted data or instrument error. The other half was frantically trying to replicate the observations or develop alternative explanations. Nature had fast-tracked Sarah's paper for peer review, which meant the findings would be public within weeks. And then the dreams began. Sarah woke at 3 in the morning from a vision so vivid it left her gasping. She had been standing in a place that wasn't quite space and wasn't quite time. Vast geometries stretched in directions her mind couldn't properly pass. And from the center of it all, something ancient and patient had turned its attention toward her. The strangest part wasn't the dream itself. The strangest part was the equation that remained in her mind when she woke, clear as if she had derived it herself. She grabbed her notebook and wrote it down before it could fade, her hand shaking. In the morning she showed it to Elena. I dreamed this. I've never seen anything like it before, but it's mathematically consistent. Elena studied the equation, her eyes widening. This describes a stable, traversable wormhole. Sarah, this is what we've been looking for. The mathematical framework that could explain the gravitational effects. But I dreamed it. That's not science. That's not even reasonable. Maybe not. Or maybe you've been so immersed in the problem that your subconscious made connections your conscious mind hadn't reached yet. Over the next few days, Sarah learned she wasn't alone. Yuki called with a similar story. She had dreamed of mathematical symbols she didn't recognize, but could reproduce perfectly. James reported the same thing. So did Elena. And Marcus, when Sarah finally worked up the courage to ask him. 47 people, Marcus said, showing her the compiled reports. Across 6 continents. Scientists who have been studying the anomaly or working with the data. All reporting the same type of dreams. All receiving information that is mathematically sound, but that they don't consciously understand. They started calling it the Dream Codex, a document compiled from all the different fragments, pieced together like a puzzle that no one had intentionally created. And as they assembled it, a picture emerged. The equations described physics beyond anything currently understood. Higher dimensional geometry. Time as a navigable dimension rather than a one-way flow. And at the center of it all, instructions for what seemed to be a form of communication. It's teaching us, Yuki said during one of their late-night sessions. The anomaly. It's using our dreams to share information we couldn't process consciously. That's insane, James protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it more insane than a black hole that predates the universe? Sarah asked. Is it more insane than gravitational effects that travel faster than light? At what point do we stop calling things insane and start accepting that our understanding of reality is incomplete? Sarah received a visit from Father Thomas Kiernan on a cold December morning. The priest was younger than she expected, maybe 50, with kind eyes and the quiet confidence of someone who had made peace with uncertainty. He represented the Vatican's observatory, one of the oldest astronomical research institutions in the world. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, he said over coffee in a small cafe near MIT, but the Church has been following your work with great interest. The Church believes in science. He smiled. The Church has always believed in science. We built some of the first observatories, supported Copernicus and Galileo before politics got in the way. We understand that discovering truth about the universe is discovering truth about God. I'm not sure what I've discovered has anything to do with God. Doesn't it? You found something that exists outside the normal flow of time, something that seems to communicate through consciousness itself. These are questions that touch on the nature of existence, of spirit, of connection. That's theology, Dr. Chen, even if you don't call it that. Father Kiernan laid out his own analysis, showing astronomical data collected by Vatican observers over the past 2 weeks. They had independently confirmed the anomaly and had come to similar conclusions about its nature. The question we're wrestling with, he said, is whether this represents communication from another intelligence, or whether we're experiencing some kind of natural phenomenon that happens to look meaningful to our pattern-seeking minds. I've been asking myself the same question. And what answer have you found? Sarah stared into her coffee, watching the steam rise and dissipate. I think it's both. I think there's a natural phenomenon we don't understand. But I also think that phenomenon is being used intentionally by something that wants to be understood. That's a terrifying thought. It's a revolutionary thought. If true, it means we're not alone. It means consciousness isn't unique to Earth. It means the universe itself might be more alive than we imagined. Father Kiernan nodded slowly. I came here to tell you that the Vatican supports your continued research. Whatever you need, within reason, we can provide. Resources, equipment, protection from political pressure. Why? Because questions about the nature of existence are too important to be left to politics or fear. Because faith without seeking is hollow, and seeking without courage is futile. He met her eyes. And because I've had the dreams too, Dr. Chen, I know what you're experiencing. You're not alone in this. That night, Sarah's dreams intensified. She stood in that impossible space again, but this time she could feel the presence more clearly. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't warm. It simply was, vast and patient and older than anything she could comprehend. A voice that wasn't quite a voice spoke in concepts rather than words. She understood it not through translation, but through direct apprehension, like suddenly knowing a truth she had always known, but forgotten. Remember. She woke with tears streaming down her face and an overwhelming sense of loss for something she couldn't name. The clock read 3:33 and she couldn't go back to sleep. Instead, she drove through empty streets to Marcus's house. He answered the door in his bathrobe, unsurprised to see her. You had the dream too. How did you know? Because I just woke from it. And I checked my phone. 7 other people from our network have messaged in the past hour. Whatever is happening, it's accelerating. They sat in his kitchen, drinking tea and comparing notes. The dreams were becoming more coherent, more detailed. The information being shared was expanding beyond mathematics into something more fundamental. A sense of urgency, a countdown. It wants us to understand something, Sarah said. And we're running out of time. Time for what? I don't know. But I feel it, like pressure building before a storm. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Sarah, I need to tell you something. I've been having chest pains. I saw a cardiologist last week. My heart is failing. They want to put me on the transplant list, but at my age, the odds aren't good. Sarah felt the world tilt. Marcus, I'm telling you because I need you to know that I don't have regrets. This discovery, this work we're doing, it's given meaning to my final chapter. Whatever happens, I'm grateful I got to be part of it. You're going to be fine. Medicine is advanced now. They can do incredible things, he smiled sadly. Don't lie to an old man. I've lived a full life. I've seen wonders. And now, at the end, I'm seeing the greatest wonder of all. That's more than most people get. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. I can't do this without you. Yes, you can. You've always been stronger than you think. Stronger than Tom knew. Stronger than I knew when you first walked into my office 30 years ago. He squeezed her hand. Promise me something. When this is over, whatever we discover, take time for Emma and Michael. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't sacrifice everything for the stars. I promise. You're lying, but I appreciate the effort. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Yuki called Sarah with barely controlled excitement. Michael, Emma's son, he's had the dreams too. That's impossible. He's 7 years old. He hasn't been exposed to any of the data. I know, but Emma called me. She found him drawing symbols this morning. Mathematical notations. And Sarah, they matched the dream codex exactly. Sarah drove to Emma's house, breaking every speed limit. Her daughter met her at the door, her face pale and frightened. Mom, something's wrong with Michael. He's been drawing for hours. He won't stop. And the things he's drawing, they don't make sense. Michael's bedroom walls were covered in paper. Hundreds of sheets taped up in careful order, filled with symbols and equations and diagrams that looked like they belonged in a physics textbook, not a second grader's room. Grandma, Michael said when he saw her. He looked exhausted, his small hands stained with marker ink. The old thing in space wants to talk to you. It says it's been waiting a long time. Sarah knelt beside him, her heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. What does it want to tell me? It wants to show you where we came from and where we're going. But first, you have to remember. Remember what? Michael's eyes were ancient for a moment, looking through her rather than at her. That we're all children of the stars. And the stars remember their children. Emma pulled Sarah into the hallway. Mom, what is happening to my son? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. And I'm going to protect him. I promise. Like you protected me. Like you were there when I needed you. Emma's voice cracked. You've spent my whole life choosing the universe over me. And now it's taking my son too. I will fix this, Sarah said, grabbing her daughter's shoulders. Whatever is happening, I will make it right. I will protect him. I swear to you. How? You don't even understand what you're dealing with. Then I'll figure it out. That's what I do. The team assembled an emergency session that afternoon. Elena flew back from Boston. Father Kiernan came from Washington. Marcus arrived looking gray but determined. They gathered in a private conference room at MIT, doors locked, phones silenced. Sarah had brought copies of Michael's drawings. She spread them across the table, and the room fell silent. A child drew these, Elena whispered. A 7-year-old child. My grandson, Sarah confirmed. He has no background in mathematics or physics. Yet these equations are consistent with everything in the Dream Codex. In some cases, they're more advanced. James was frantically photographing the drawings with his phone. This symbol here, I've seen it before. It appeared in my dream last week, but I couldn't figure out what it meant. Now, seeing it in context with these other notations, it's describing a quantum state that shouldn't be possible. Unless you're working with physics that operates outside our universe's normal rules. Yuki added. Father Kiernan studied the drawings with the careful attention of someone trained in symbolic interpretation. There's a narrative here. These aren't just equations. They're telling a story. Look at the progression. He arranged several sheets in sequence. Creation, expansion, collapse, and then rebirth. The cyclic universe model. Marcus said. It's describing the death and rebirth of reality itself. Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Michael won't wake up. I'm calling 911, she ran. The others followed. They reached the hospital to find Michael in a pediatric ward, unconscious but stable. The doctors were baffled. All his vital signs were normal, but he wouldn't respond to any stimulus. EEG readings showed unusual brain activity, patterns that resembled deep meditation or dreaming, but more intense. Emma sat beside the bed, holding her son's small hand. When she saw Sarah, her face crumpled. What did you do? What did your research do to him? I don't know. But I'm going to fix it. How? The doctors can't even tell me what's wrong. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sarah, I think I know what's happening. Can we talk? They stepped into the hallway. Marcus kept his voice low. The contact is intensifying. The anomaly is trying to communicate directly, and it's using the most receptive minds it can find. Children, people without the rigid mental frameworks that block the transmission. So it's attacking children. Not attacking. Reaching out, like a parent trying to get a child's attention. It doesn't understand that its touch is overwhelming. Then we need to make it stop, or we need to answer. Sarah, I think Michael is in a form of trance state because he's receiving information his young brain can't process. But if we could complete the communication, if we could establish real contact, maybe the pressure would ease. How do we do that? The translation matrix. We use the dream codex to build an interface, a way to communicate deliberately instead of waiting for dreams and visions. They worked through the night. Yuki and James assembled computer equipment in a corner of the hospital's conference room. Elena coordinated with scientists around the world who had been experiencing the dreams, gathering their fragments of the codex. Father Kiernan provided historical context, finding parallels in religious, visions and mystical experiences throughout human history. The translation matrix began as a simple algorithm, designed to interpret the patterns in the anomalies, emissions using the mathematical framework from the dreams. But as they built it, fed it more data, incorporated more of the dream codex, it evolved into something unprecedented, a bridge between human consciousness and whatever intelligence existed within or beyond the anomaly. Sarah barely left the hospital. She spent hours sitting with Michael, holding his hand, talking to him, even though he couldn't respond. Emma watched from the doorway, her anger slowly giving way to exhaustion and fear. Tell me the truth, Mom, can you fix this? I don't know, but I'm going to try everything I can. That's what Dad always said, that you would try everything. But trying isn't enough when the person you love is the one paying the price for your obsession. The words cut deep because they were true. Sarah had spent her life chasing discoveries, always believing the next answer was worth the sacrifice. But sitting beside her grandson's unconscious form, watching machines monitor his inexplicable condition, she finally understood the cost. If I could go back, Sarah said quietly, if I could choose between this discovery and having been there for you, for Michael, I don't know what I would choose. And that makes me a terrible mother. Emma was silent for a long moment. Then she sat down beside Sarah, their shoulders touching. You're not terrible. You're just human, and humans are complicated. She took Sarah's other hand.
Fix this.
Save my son, and then we'll figure out how to be a family again. 3 days after Michael fell into his trance, the translation matrix reached operational status. The team gathered around a bank of computers, nervous and uncertain. They had built a tool to talk to something that might be a natural phenomenon or might be a conscious intelligence billions of years old. Either way, they were about to use it. Everyone ready? Sarah asked. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. Remember what I told you? Some doors are meant to be opened. We just have to be brave enough. Sarah initiated the translation matrix. The computers hummed to life, processing vast amounts of data, searching for patterns, attempting to impose structure and meaning on signals from the edge of the universe. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the screens began to fill with data. Not random noise, but structured information. A response. The anomaly was answering. In his hospital bed, Michael's eyes opened. The message came through in fragments, pieces of a vast communication filtering through the translation matrix like light through a prism. Sarah watched the screens, her heart pounding as meaning emerged from chaos. Numbers, equations, but also something more. Images forming in her mind, not through her eyes, but directly into her consciousness. The sensation was overwhelming and strangely familiar. "I'm getting visual data," Yuki announced, her voice shaking. "But it's not being transmitted through the normal channels. It's in my head." "Mine too," James confirmed. They all felt it. The presence that had haunted their dreams, now fully manifesting through the translation matrix. And with it came revelation. The anomaly was not an object. It was not a black hole in any conventional sense. It was a door, a gateway, a bridge between what came before and what exists now. Sarah saw it as clearly as if someone had drawn a diagram on a whiteboard. The universe they knew, the one that began 13.8 billion years ago with the Big Bang, was not the first. It was not even the second or third. Reality was cyclic, each universe born from the death of its predecessor, phoenix-like but following physical laws rather than mythological ones. And sometimes, in the transitions between universal cycles, information survived, preserved in structures that existed outside normal space-time. Black holes that weren't quite black holes, singularities that weren't quite singularities, doorways that allowed the accumulated knowledge of previous universes to pass into the next. "It's a preservation archive," Marcus whispered, understanding flooding his features. "They encoded themselves into it before their universe collapsed." "They?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "The civilization that came before the Big Bang, before time as we measure it. They achieved such mastery over physics that they could survive the end of everything by becoming information itself." The translation matrix churned through more data. Sarah felt the touch of vast intelligence, patient and ancient beyond measure. It had been waiting for a species to develop enough to understand, waiting for minds curious enough to look and see what was hidden in plain sight at the edge of observable space. Father Kiernan made the sign of the cross, his hands trembling. "They didn't die. They transcended. And now they want to talk to us," Elena said. But there was more. Sarah felt it in her bones, in the spaces between heartbeats. She pulled out her phone and called Emma. "Mom, Michael just woke up. The doctors are examining him now, but he seems fine. He's asking for you." Relief flooded through Sarah, but it came with a new fear. "I'm coming. Don't let anyone leave the room. I need to talk to him." She drove back to the hospital, Marcus beside her. "You felt it too," he said. "It wasn't a question. The urgency, yes, something is about to happen, or something already happened long ago, and we're only now seeing the consequences." Michael was sitting up in bed when they arrived, looking surprisingly alert for a child who had been unconscious for 3 days. Emma hovered protectively, but Michael smiled when he saw Sarah. "Grandma, you did it. You opened the door." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed. "Michael, what do you remember?" "Everything. I remember being asleep but not sleeping. I remember the old ones teaching me things. They showed me where we came from. Before the stars, before the light. There was another place, another time, and they lived there until it ended. But they didn't want to end, so they became something that couldn't end. They became memories written in gravity and light." Emma gripped Sarah's arm. "What is he talking about?" "The truth," Sarah said quietly. "Or part of it." Marcus knelt beside the bed, his old knees protesting. "Michael, did they tell you why they're contacting us now?" "Because we're ready. Almost ready. We learned how to look far enough and deep enough to see them. That means we're close to understanding." Michael's face grew serious, too serious for a 7-year-old. "But they're worried. They tried before, with other species. And some weren't ready. The knowledge destroyed them." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "Other species? There have been lots. Across all the time since the new universe began. Some listened, some didn't. The ones who listened too early went crazy. The knowledge was too big for them. They broke. And the ones who didn't listen, They grew up and forgot to look at the stars. They stayed small and afraid. They died without ever knowing where they came from. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. This was the choice then. Humanity stood at a threshold. Accept the knowledge and risk being overwhelmed. Reject it and remain forever ignorant. Or find a middle path if such a thing existed. Back at MIT, the team was frantically documenting everything flowing through the translation matrix. But Sarah knew they were only capturing a fraction of it. The true message wasn't in data streams or mathematical equations. It was in the dreams, in the direct consciousness-to-consciousness contact that humans barely understood and couldn't replicate. She returned to Tom's old office, the one at their house that she had kept exactly as he left it. She had avoided it for 5 years, unable to face the reminders of loss. But now she needed to find something. A feeling, a memory, in the false bottom of his desk drawer, where he had always hidden birthday presents and anniversary surprises. She found a notebook. His handwriting filled page after page, dates going back 6 months before his death. Having the dreams again, mathematical structures I don't recognize, voices that aren't quite voices. Sarah would say I'm working too hard. Maybe she's right. But it feels important, like something is trying to tell me something I need to know. The entries continued, growing more detailed. Tom had been experiencing everything Sarah was now experiencing. The contact, the visions, the sense of vast intelligence reaching out across impossible distances. The final entry was dated the day before he died. Tonight I dreamed I was standing at the edge of forever. Something ancient and patient was there. It told me the universe remembers. It told me we're not alone. It told me to tell Sarah, but I'm afraid. Afraid she'll think I've lost my mind. Afraid of what it means if I haven't. Sarah closed the notebook, tears streaming down her face. Tom had known he'd been on the same path she was now walking, and either the strain had triggered his aneurysm, or something more mysterious had happened at the moment of contact. She pulled out her phone and called Emma. I need you to check something for me. Tom's medical records. The autopsy report. Was there anything unusual about the timing? Emma was quiet for a moment. Why are you asking this, please? Just check. An hour later, Emma called back. The aneurysm occurred at exactly 3:33 in the morning. The coroner noted it in the report because the blood evidence allowed them to pinpoint the time precisely. Mom, why does that matter? 3:33. The same time Sarah kept waking from her dreams. The same time Michael had woken up. The same time reported by dreamers around the world. The anomaly wasn't just communicating, it was synchronizing them, bringing human consciousness into alignment with something that existed outside normal time. And sometimes that alignment was too much for the human brain to handle. Tom hadn't died of natural causes. He had died from contact with something his mind couldn't process. And now Sarah was walking the same path, pulling her entire team with her. Sarah called an emergency meeting. Everyone gathered in Elena's office at MIT, the space feeling smaller now with the weight of what they were discussing. She laid out Tom's notebook, the medical records, the timeline of his symptoms leading up to his death. My husband was experiencing the same contact we are, and it killed him. The room fell into shocked silence. Marcus was the first to speak. Sarah, you don't know that for certain. Aneurysms can happen spontaneously. At exactly 3:33 in the morning? The same time that keeps appearing in all our experiences? That's not coincidence, Marcus. That's correlation. Maybe causation. Yuki's face had gone pale. So we're all in danger. This contact, this dream communication, it could kill any of us. It could, Sarah admitted. Or maybe Tom was exposed to something more intense. Maybe the contact 5 years ago was different, less refined. Or maybe he was just unlucky, a tragic coincidence wrapped in a larger pattern. We should stop, James said firmly. Shut down the translation matrix. End the observations. If there's even a chance this is lethal, we can't continue and abandon everything we've learned. Elena protested. Sarah, tell him. This is the most important discovery in human history. We cannot walk away now. Elena, people might die. I might die. You might die. Is that worth it? The Russian scientist's jaw set stubbornly. Yes, if what we're learning is true, then this knowledge could transform human civilization. It could answer every fundamental question about existence. That is worth risk. Easy to say when it's not your grandson who was caught in the middle of it, Sarah shot back. The argument spiraled, voices rising. Father Kiernan finally stood and held up his hands. Enough! This is not a decision any of us can make lightly, but we also cannot make it in fear. If this contact truly represents communication with intelligence from a previous universal cycle, then we have been given a profound gift. The question is not whether it's dangerous. Everything meaningful is dangerous. The question is whether we have the wisdom to proceed responsibly. Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to think past the grief and fear. We need to establish protocols, medical monitoring for everyone involved. If anyone shows signs of neurological stress, they step back immediately. We work in short sessions with the translation matrix, not extended exposure. And we keep collecting data about the effects, treating this as much as a medical study as an astronomical one. Agreed, Marcus said. But Sarah, there's something else we need to address. The government. They've been remarkably quiet since you went rogue. That means they're either respecting your independence or planning something. As if summoned by the mention, Sarah's phone rang. The number was blocked. She answered on speaker. Dr. Chen, this is Director Coleman from the National Security Agency. I think it's time we had a conversation. They met the next morning in a nondescript office building in downtown Boston. Coleman was a thin woman in her 50s, with the sharp eyes of someone who had built a career on reading between lines. She was accompanied by 2 analysts and a military liaison. You've been busy, Coleman said without preamble. Submitting papers, building unauthorized communication devices, teaching 7-year-old children advanced physics through some kind of psychic transmission. It's not psychic. It's quantum information transfer through mechanisms we don't fully understand yet. Doctor, I don't care about the mechanisms. I care about the implications. You've made contact with an entity that may represent a threat to national security, possibly planetary security. And you did it without clearance, oversight, or apparently any concern for the consequences. Sarah met her gaze steadily. I made contact with a phenomenon that exists outside our jurisdiction. It's not a threat. It's an opportunity. An opportunity that killed your husband. The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah felt the room tilt slightly. How do you know about that? We've been watching you for weeks, Dr. Chen. Ever since your discovery became public. We know about the dreams. We know about the Dream Codex. We know about all of it. What you don't know is that you're not the first. Coleman pulled out a file decades old and slid it across the table. The label read, Project Threshold, 1987. Marcus reached for it with shaking hands. This is the signal I detected, the one they told me to bury. We didn't bury it. We studied it, quietly, carefully, and we learned that approximately every 40 years there's an intensification, a wave of contact that touches multiple minds simultaneously. Your husband was part of the last wave. He wasn't the only casualty. 3 other scientists died under similar circumstances. Aneurysms, strokes, sudden cardiac events, all at 3:33 in the morning. Sarah felt sick. You knew this was dangerous and you let us proceed anyway. We didn't let you do anything. You went rogue, remember? But yes, we knew, and we let it play out, because this time is different. This time, we have the technology to properly interface with the phenomenon. Your translation matrix works, Dr. Chen. It provides a buffer, a way to communicate without direct consciousness-to-consciousness contact. That's what your husband lacked. That's what killed him and the others. So what do you want from us? Partnership. You continue your research, but under supervision, with resources, with protection, and with the understanding that this is bigger than any individual's curiosity or career. This is about humanity's next step. We need to take it carefully. Sarah looked around the table at her team. Marcus nodded slowly. Elena looked thoughtful. Yuki and James seemed uncertain but willing. On our terms, Sarah said. We publish our findings openly. We share the knowledge with the international community. This doesn't become a weapon or a state secret. Within reason, some things will need to remain classified for public safety. No, all of it. The truth shared freely. That's the only way this works. Coleman studied her for a long moment. You're a difficult woman, Dr. Chen. I'm a scientist who learned from her mistakes. Take it or leave it. I'll take it. But understand, if this goes sideways, if people start dying, or if the contact becomes openly disruptive, we will shut it down. Hard. No appeals. No arguments. Fair enough. They shook hands, and Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on her shoulders. She had wanted this discovery to change everything. Now she was getting her wish, and all the terrible consequences that came with it. With government backing came resources Sarah had never imagined. A secure facility in Virginia, state-of-the-art computing equipment, medical personnel trained to monitor neurological responses, and most importantly, time and protection to do the work properly. The translation matrix was rebuilt from the ground up, this time with safety protocols embedded in its core architecture. Exposure limits, automatic shutoffs if brain activity entered dangerous ranges. Multiple redundancies to prevent the kind of overwhelming contact that had killed Tom and the others. Sarah stood in the new operations center, watching technicians calibrate equipment. Marcus was beside her, looking frailer than he had a month ago. His cardiologist had given him strict orders to limit stress, but he had ignored them. Some things, he said, were worth dying for. Are we ready for this? She asked him. No, but we're as ready as we'll ever be. Sometimes you have to jump before you know where you'll land. The team had expanded. Elena brought her most trusted colleagues from MIT. Yuki recruited data specialists from around the world. James assembled an engineering team that could maintain and improve the translation matrix in real time. Father Kiernan served as liaison to religious communities, helping frame the discovery in ways that wouldn't trigger panic. And they weren't alone. The NSA had been monitoring similar contact events globally. Scientists in Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, all reporting the same dreams, the same mathematical revelations. The phenomenon was reaching out to anyone capable of understanding, regardless of nationality or politics. An emergency UN session had been called. Sarah was scheduled to testify in 2 days, presenting their findings to representatives from every nation. The translation matrix would be demonstrated, its safety protocols explained, and a framework for international cooperation proposed. But first, they needed to complete the contact, to receive the full message and understand what the ancient intelligence was trying to share. Sarah gathered the core team in the operations center late at night when the facility was quieter. Elena, Marcus, Yuki, James, Father Kiernan, the people who had been there from the beginning, who had risked everything to follow this mystery to its conclusion. We're going to use the translation matrix to its full capacity, Sarah announced. No more fragments. No more partial transmissions. We're going to open the channel completely and see what comes through. That's dangerous, James warned. We don't know what a full transmission will do. We know what half measures have done. Tom died because he was exposed without any protection, without any framework for processing what he experienced. We have that framework now. We have the codex, the matrix, the safety protocols. It's time to finish what we started. Medical personnel prepped each of them, attaching monitors to track heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the neurologist assigned to the project, went over the warning signs one more time. If anyone experiences severe headache, vision problems, or disorientation, we shut down immediately. Your health is more important than any data. They took their positions around the translation matrix. Sarah sat at the central console, her hands hovering over the controls. Around her, screens displayed real-time data from the JWST, gravitational sensors, and the Dream Codex algorithms. Initiating full contact sequence, she announced. The system hummed to life. Data began flowing, faster and more complex than anything they had seen before. The anomaly was responding, and its response was overwhelming in its completeness. Sarah felt the presence in her mind, but this time it was controlled, channeled through the translation matrix rather than hitting her raw consciousness. It was like the difference between standing in a hurricane and watching one through a window. Still powerful, still awe-inspiring, but safely contained. Images formed. Not visual images, but understanding directly downloaded into her awareness. She saw the previous universe in its final moments. A civilization so advanced they had mapped every star, understood every physical law, achieved harmony between consciousness and cosmos. But they could not stop entropy. They could not prevent the universe from dying. So they had done something unprecedented. They had encoded their entire civilization into gravitational structures that would survive the collapse. Consciousness translated into pure mathematics, stored in singularities that existed outside normal space-time. When the new universe was born from the death of the old, those structures remained, waiting. They seeded us, Marcus breathed, seeing the same visions. Not directly, but they left guideposts. Patterns in the cosmic microwave background, anomalies in the distribution of galaxies, breadcrumbs leading back to them. Why? Yuki asked. Why go through all that effort? The answer came not in words, but in feeling. Loneliness. Across the vast death and rebirth of reality, they had survived, but alone. They wanted others to know they had existed, wanted to share what they had learned, wanted to ensure that the next civilizations wouldn't have to start from zero. They're teachers, Father Kiernan said with wonder. Shepherds across the void of cosmic death, making sure knowledge isn't lost. The transmission continued. Sarah saw mathematical frameworks for technologies centuries beyond current human capability, methods for manipulating space-time, techniques for extending consciousness beyond biological limits, and most importantly, warnings. Other species received this knowledge, Elena said, her voice tight. Some succeeded in using it, but many didn't. The ones who tried to rush, who grabbed for power without wisdom. They destroyed themselves. The ancient intelligence showed them the failures. Civilizations that had achieved energy manipulation without moral development. Species that had gained the ability to travel between stars, but not between individuals. Warnings written in the ruins of dead worlds scattered across multiple universal cycles. The knowledge itself isn't dangerous, Sarah realized. The danger is in how we use it. They're not just offering information. They're testing whether we have the wisdom to handle it. Marcus suddenly gasped, his hand going to his chest. Dr. Martinez was beside him instantly, checking his monitors. His heart rate is spiking. We need to shut down. No, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Not yet. We're so close. Marcus, you could die. Then I'll die learning something beautiful. He looked at Sarah with clear eyes. Don't stop. Not for me. Finish it. The transmission reached its climax. A final revelation that made everything else pale in comparison. The anomaly wasn't just a message from the past. It was a choice for the present. The gateway could open, fully, permanently. Not a trickle of information through dreams and mathematics, but a complete connection to the archive of the previous universe. Every discovery, every achievement, every lesson learned across billions of years of existence. Humanity could have it all right now, if they chose to accept. But the choice came with stakes. Once opened fully, the gateway could not be closed. The flood of knowledge would be irreversible. And based on the ancient intelligence's observations, only about 30% of species who made that choice survived the experience intact. We need more time, James said, his face pale. We're not ready. Humanity is barely out of its adolescence. We still fight wars over resources and ideology. How can we handle knowledge from a civilization millions of years more advanced? Because the alternative is to remain children forever, Elena countered. Afraid of growing up, afraid of responsibility. Yes, it's risky, but so is everything worth doing. Sarah felt torn. In her mind, she could see the full scope of what was being offered. Technologies that could eliminate disease, poverty, environmental destruction. Understanding that could prevent the petty conflicts that had plagued humanity since its beginning. But she also saw the dangers. knowledge without wisdom, power without restraint, the terrible possibility that in reaching for transcendence, humanity might lose itself entirely. Marcus's breathing had stabilized, though he still looked gray. What does the intelligence recommend? Sarah posed the question through the translation matrix. The response came through clearly, though it carried a weight of sadness. They've seen this decision point hundreds of times across multiple universal cycles. The species who succeed are the ones who choose partial knowledge, who accept enough to grow, but not so much that they're overwhelmed, who maintain their own development path while learning from the past. A middle way, Father Kiernan said. Not rejection, not total acceptance, but careful integration. How do we choose what to accept and what to defer? Yuki asked. The answer came with elegant simplicity. The ancient intelligence had already made that determination. The Dream Codex wasn't random. It was carefully calibrated information, selected specifically for humanity's current level of development. Medical advances they could implement within decades. Energy solutions they could comprehend and build. Social frameworks that matched human psychology and culture. The rest, the truly advanced knowledge that could either elevate or destroy them, would remain sealed in the archive. Available but not forced. Humanity could access it when ready, measured not by time, but by wisdom. When they had demonstrated the ability to use lesser knowledge responsibly, greater revelations would become accessible. It's a graduation system, Sarah breathed. Like ascending through levels of understanding, each achievement unlocks the next possibility. And if we refuse even the partial knowledge? Elena asked. The intelligence showed them that outcome too. Humanity would continue its current trajectory. Progress would be organic, self-directed, but also slower and more prone to catastrophic mistakes. Climate change, resource depletion, nuclear proliferation. All solvable problems, but requiring centuries of trial and error that the gifted knowledge could shortcut. No pressure, James muttered. Sarah looked around at her team. These people had become her family over the months of this investigation, bound together by wonder and fear and the shared burden of impossible responsibility. She thought about Emma and Michael, about the world they would inherit, about all the children of Earth facing futures shaped by this moment. We need to bring this to the world, she said. This isn't a decision 5 scientists can make. This is humanity's choice. Every nation, every culture, every person should have a voice. That could take years, Elena protested. Then it takes years. The intelligence has waited billions of years. It can wait a few more. And we need that time. Time to understand what we're accepting. Time to build consensus. Time to develop the social and ethical frameworks to use this knowledge wisely. Marcus smiled weakly. When did you become so patient? When I realized that rushing leads to mistakes, that the fastest path isn't always the right one. She looked at him with affection. You taught me that even if it took me 3 decades to learn it. They began the shutdown sequence, gradually reducing the translation matrix's power, easing the connection rather than severing it abruptly. The presence in Sarah's mind faded slowly, leaving behind a sense of approval. The intelligence was pleased with their restraint. As the systems powered down, Dr. Martinez rushed Marcus to the medical bay. Sarah followed, her heart heavy with fear. They had come so far, learned so much. But if Marcus died now after everything, she didn't know how she would bear it. Emma appeared in the facility that night, having driven from Maryland the moment Sarah called. She found her mother sitting outside the medical bay, staring at nothing. Mom, I came as soon as I heard. How is he? Stable. They're saying he'll probably be fine, but he needs surgery, a bypass. The stress of the contact triggered a minor cardiac event, but they caught it in time. Emma sat beside her. And you? Are you okay? I don't know. I feel like I've been given a gift and a burden at the same time. We've learned things that could change everything, Em, but the responsibility of it is crushing. Then don't carry it alone. You've spent your whole life trying to bear everything by yourself. Let others help. Let the world help. You found the door, Mom, but you don't have to be the only one who decides whether to walk through it. Sarah took her daughter's hand. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best, eventually. Emma squeezed her hand. Michael wants to see you. He's been asking about the stars, about where we came from. I think he understands more than we realize. Children often do. They sat together in silence, mother and daughter, until the doctors emerged with news that Marcus was out of surgery and recovering well. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. The next morning, she stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Representatives from 193 nations watched as she presented their findings. The anomaly, the contact, the choice. She held nothing back, sharing everything they had learned, making the case that this decision belonged to all of humanity, not to any nation or group. We stand at a threshold, she concluded. Behind us is everything we've been. Ahead is everything we might become. The ancient intelligence that reached out to us survived the death of its own universe to offer us guidance, not to control us, not to replace our own development, but to help us avoid the mistakes they made and that countless other species have made across the vast cycles of cosmic time. I ask you all to consider this carefully, to consult with your people, your cultures, your wisdom traditions, and then to come together to decide our shared future. Because that's what this is. Not America's future or China's future or any single nation's future, but humanity's future. And it's too important to rush. The assembly erupted in discussion. Some delegates were enthusiastic, others skeptical, a few hostile, seeing conspiracy or threat in every word. But they were talking, debating, engaging. And that, Sarah realized, was exactly what needed to happen. The choice would take time. Months, perhaps years. But it would be made thoughtfully, collectively, with wisdom rather than haste. And somehow that felt right. 6 months after the UN presentation, the world had changed in subtle but profound ways. The existence of the anomaly and the contact were now public knowledge, debated in parliaments and classrooms, religious services and scientific conferences. Humanity was processing the impossible, and remarkably, it was holding together. There were deniers, of course, people who refused to believe any of it. And there were zealots who saw in the revelation either salvation or damnation. But most people fell somewhere in the middle, awed and uncertain, but willing to learn more. The translation matrix had been replicated in facilities around the world, each one staffed by international teams. The knowledge from the Dream Codex was being carefully analyzed, verified, and prepared for controlled release. Medical advances were scheduled to enter clinical trials within the year. Clean energy prototypes were being built. Educational frameworks that incorporated the new understanding of physics were being developed. And slowly humanity was making its choice. Not through a single vote, but through 1,000 small decisions. To accept the gift, but carefully. To learn, but not to rush. To grow into the knowledge, rather than trying to swallow it all at once. Sarah stood in the rebuilt operations center at Goddard, back in the facility where this had all begun. Marcus was beside her, recovered from his surgery and moving with the careful precision of someone who had been given a second chance at life. The rest of the core team was there too, along with representatives from 50 nations. Today, they would initiate the final contact. Not to receive more knowledge, but to send a message back. To tell the ancient intelligence that humanity had made its choice, and to thank them for their patience and guidance. "Everyone ready?" Sarah asked, her hand hovering over the controls. Around the room, heads nodded. Dr. Martinez monitored their vitals from her station. Security personnel stood by, though Sarah doubted they could do much if something went wrong at this stage. Father Kiernan offered a quiet prayer, a benediction for what they were about to attempt. Sarah activated the translation matrix. The familiar hum filled the room as the system powered up, establishing connection with the anomaly at the edge of observable space. But this time, instead of receiving, they were transmitting. Sarah had spent weeks crafting the message, working with linguists and philosophers and poets to find words that captured humanity's gratitude and determination. But in the end, she had realized that words weren't enough. The ancient intelligence didn't think in language. It thought in mathematics, in pure concept, in the universal language of consciousness itself. So the message was an equation, a beautiful, elegant expression that described humanity's current state and its chosen path forward. Growth with wisdom, advancement with restraint, the courage to reach for the stars while keeping our feet on the ground. As the transmission went out, Sarah felt the presence in her mind again. But this time, it was different, not overwhelming or demanding attention. Simply present, like a parent watching a child take its first independent steps. Proud, hopeful, and yes, a little bit sad that the intense contact phase was ending. "They're acknowledging," Yuki reported, watching the data streams. "The signal is being received. They're responding." The response came through the translation matrix, not as data, but as pure feeling, approval, relief, and something that could only be described as love. The ancient intelligence had been alone for so long, surviving across the death and rebirth of reality itself. And now, finally, it had found others. Not children to be saved, but partners to be welcomed. "They're changing the anomaly's properties," James announced, his voice filled with awe. "The gravitational signature is stabilizing. The time dilation effects are normalizing. I think they're making the connection permanent but safe. A marker we can return to when we're ready for the next level of knowledge." Sarah saw it in her mind's eye. The gateway, transforming from a dangerous, overwhelming presence into something humanity could approach safely. A lighthouse at the edge of space, always visible, always waiting, but no longer forcing contact. They had proven themselves worthy of trust, and the ancient intelligence was honoring that by giving them autonomy. "Is it over?" Eleanor asked quietly. "No," Sarah replied. "It's just beginning." This was never about them teaching us everything. It was about them showing us there was more to learn. We'll spend centuries unpacking what they've already shared. And when we're ready, when we've demonstrated wisdom rather than just intelligence, the rest will be there waiting. Marcus gripped her shoulder. "You did it, Sarah. You opened a door and then had the wisdom not to rush through it. We did it. All of us, every person who looked at the data and chose to think rather than panic. Every nation that chose cooperation over competition. Every person who decided that growing slowly and surely was better than rushing into disaster." The transmission completed. The translation matrix powered down. In her mind, Sarah felt the presence recede, not disappearing, but moving back to a comfortable distance. The ancient intelligence was giving them space to grow, to become, and in that space humanity would build its future. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues and friends. People from dozens of countries, different backgrounds and beliefs, all united by wonder and the courage to face the unknown. This was humanity at its best. And if they could come together for this, what else might they achieve? Emma and Michael arrived at the facility that evening, having been given special clearance to visit. Michael ran to Sarah, throwing his arms around her waist. "Grandma! Did you talk to the old ones?" "We did. And they said thank you for being brave when they were trying to reach us. Are they going to come visit us?" Sarah knelt to be at his level. "Not like that. They exist in a different way than we do. But they're always going to be there watching over us, like distant family who want us to do well, like Great-Grandpa Tom." The question made Sarah's breath catch. She had told Michael about Tom, about his love of the stars and his belief that the universe held wonders beyond imagining. "Yes, very much like Great-Grandpa Tom." Emma touched Sarah's shoulder gently. "The doctors want to do a full neurological workup on everyone who was exposed to the contact. They want to make sure there are no delayed effects." "I know. Marcus is already scheduled." "We all are." Sarah stood, taking Michael's hand. "But I feel fine. Better than fine. I feel like I've been given a gift I didn't know I was missing." "What gift?" Perspective. All my life, I've been chasing the next discovery, the next revelation, always looking forward, never satisfied with where I was. But now I understand. The journey is the point. The searching matters as much as the finding, and the people we travel with are more important than any destination. Emma smiled, and Sarah saw forgiveness in it. So you're saying you've learned patience? I'm saying I'm trying to learn it. That's going to have to be good enough. They walked through the facility together, Sarah pointing out the equipment, explaining in simple terms what each piece did. Michael listened with the intense focus of a child who would probably end up as a scientist himself someday. Emma walked beside them, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt like they were truly together as a family. In the main observation room, screens still displayed the anomaly. But it looked different now. The chaotic energy signatures had resolved into something more structured, more peaceful. A beacon rather than a warning. A promise rather than a threat. It's beautiful, Emma said, staring at the displays. It is. And it's been there all along, waiting for us to be ready to see it. Like so many beautiful things we miss because we're not looking at the right time or in the right way. Marcus appeared in the doorway, moving slowly, but with his old spark back in his eyes. Sarah, there's someone here to see you. The someone was Director Coleman from the NSA, accompanied by another woman Sarah didn't recognize. Coleman's expression was unreadable as she approached. Dr. Chen, I wanted to inform you personally. The President is issuing an executive order establishing an international commission on cosmic contact. You're being asked to chair it. Sarah blinked in surprise. I'm not sure I'm the right person for that kind of political role. You're exactly the right person. You're the one who found the anomaly. You're the one who showed restraint when others would have rushed ahead. And you're the one both the scientific community and the general public trust to handle this responsibly. Coleman gestured to the woman beside her. This is Dr. Aisha Okafor from the African Union. She'll be co-chairing with you, ensuring this truly is an international effort. Dr. Okafor stepped forward, extending her hand. She was younger than Sarah, maybe 40, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile. I've followed your work for years, Dr. Chen. It's an honor to meet you. And I believe together we can help guide humanity through this transition. Transition to what? Emma asked. To whatever comes next, Dr. Okafor replied. Your mother has opened a door. Now we all have to figure out how to walk through it without losing ourselves in the process. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself in a role she had never anticipated. Not just scientist, but bridge builder, mediator, spokesperson for a process that involved all of humanity. The commission brought together representatives from every nation, every major religious tradition, ethicists and philosophers, and ordinary citizens selected by lottery. Their task was monumental: to create frameworks for distributing the knowledge from the Dream Codex, to establish protocols for future contact, to ensure that the benefits of the ancient intelligence's gift reached all of humanity, not just the wealthy or powerful, to build consensus on how fast to implement changes and how to preserve human autonomy and cultural diversity in the face of transformative knowledge. It was exhausting work, but Sarah found it deeply meaningful. For the first time, she wasn't just pursuing knowledge for its own sake. She was helping ensure that knowledge served humanity's highest aspirations rather than its basest impulses. Marcus joined the commission as senior advisor, contributing the wisdom of his decades in science. Yuki led the technical working group, ensuring that the translation matrix technology was shared openly rather than hoarded. James coordinated with engineers worldwide to implement the clean energy solutions from the Codex. Elena built partnerships with universities on every continent, creating a truly global research network. And Father Kiernan worked with religious leaders to frame the contact in ways that enhanced rather than threatened faith. The ancient intelligence, he argued, didn't disprove the existence of the divine. If anything, it revealed a cosmos more wondrous and purposeful than dogma alone could capture. Life seeking to preserve life across the death of universes. Consciousness reaching out to consciousness across impossible gulfs. These were deeply spiritual concepts, compatible with virtually every religious tradition. Sarah made time for family, real time, not the distracted half-presence she had given before. She attended Michael's soccer games, had dinner with Emma every week, started a tradition of stargazing together, the three of them in Emma's backyard, looking up at the night sky and talking about where humanity was heading. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Emma asked during one of these evenings. "Accepting the knowledge but slowly?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I think we made the most human choice, to be ambitious but cautious, to reach for growth while respecting our limitations. Will it be perfect? No. Will we make mistakes along the way? Absolutely. But we're making those mistakes together as a species, rather than having solutions imposed on us from outside. That matters." Michael pointed at a bright star low on the horizon. "Is that where they are?" "The old ones, in a sense. They're everywhere and nowhere. They exist in a way that's hard to explain. But yes, sweetheart, that star points toward where we first saw their message. Do you think they're watching us now? I think they're aware of us, hoping we succeed, ready to help if we need it, but mostly giving us space to figure things out for ourselves. That's what good teachers do." The medical assessments came back showing no adverse effects from the contact. The protocols they had established worked. The translation matrix provided sufficient buffering to make communion with the ancient intelligence safe, at least for the level of knowledge they had chosen to accept. Tom's death, Sarah learned from the detailed analysis, had been a tragic confluence of factors. Pre-existing weakness in his cerebral arteries, intense, unfiltered contact before proper safety measures existed, and perhaps just terrible luck. The universe's random cruelty asserting itself at the worst possible moment. She would never know for certain, but she made peace with the uncertainty. Tom had died pursuing truth. There were worse ways to leave the world. A year after the initial contact, Sarah stood before a gathering of Nobel laureates in Stockholm. She had been awarded the Physics Prize, along with Marcus, Elena, Yuki, and James. The committee had created a special shared award, recognizing that this discovery belonged to the team, not any individual. In her acceptance speech, Sarah spoke not about the science, but about the philosophy that had guided their work. "We are living through a moment of unprecedented change. Not because we've learned all the answers, but because we've learned better questions. The ancient intelligence that reached out to us didn't give us a manual for building paradise. They gave us a mirror, showing us what we might become if we have the courage and wisdom to grow. They showed us that consciousness is precious across all of space and time, that knowledge is meant to be shared, that loneliness is the greatest tragedy, and connection the greatest triumph. We have chosen to walk the path they laid out. Not blindly, not recklessly, but with our eyes open and our hearts hopeful. And whatever we become, we will become together." The applause that followed was thunderous. But what mattered most to Sarah was seeing Emma and Michael in the front row, clapping and smiling. Her daughter mouthed 2 words: "I'm proud." That night, back in her hotel room, Sarah opened her observation log for what she knew might be the last entry in this particular chapter of her life. "It has been 389 days since we first detected the anomaly. In that time, the world has changed in ways both subtle and profound. We have learned that we are not alone, that the universe remembers, that consciousness itself is woven into the fabric of reality in ways we are only beginning to understand. But the most important lesson hasn't come from the ancient intelligence. It has come from watching humanity respond to this revelation. We are capable of more than we knew. More wisdom, more courage, more unity. The journey ahead will be long and difficult, but for the first time in my life, I believe we're ready for it. Not because we're perfect, but because we've proven we can learn. And in the end, that's all any species can hope for. The chance to grow, the chance to become, the chance to be worthy of the cosmos that gave us birth." She closed the journal and set it aside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she was content. 3 months after Stockholm, Sarah stood on the porch of a small house in the Outer Banks, the same beach where she and Tom had spent their anniversaries. The house belonged to Emma now, a place where 3 generations could gather and remember and dream. Michael ran along the shoreline, chasing waves with the fearlessness of childhood. Emma sat beside Sarah on the weathered steps, both of them watching the boy play. "He wants to be an astronomer," Emma said. "He talks about it constantly. Following in your footsteps and yours. You studied astronomy before switching to teaching. I studied it because of you and Dad. I just realized I preferred helping people understand the stars rather than studying them myself." Emma paused. "Do you regret any of it, Mom? The choices you made?" Sarah considered the question with the honesty it deserved. "I regret missing moments with you, recitals and birthdays and ordinary days that felt unimportant at the time but added up to a life. I don't regret the work itself. Both things can be true. The Commission is creating scholarship programs, I heard, making sure every child, regardless of background, can study the new knowledge if they want to." That was Dr. Okafor's initiative. She's brilliant at thinking about equity and access. "We're calling it the Legacy Protocol. Staged release of knowledge as humanity demonstrates readiness, but with equal opportunity built into every stage." The Legacy Protocol had become the framework for humanity's journey forward. Clean energy technologies were already being deployed, reducing carbon emissions ahead of every projection. Medical advances were entering trials that would eliminate diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Educational reforms were helping children understand both Earth's place in the cosmos and their responsibility to it. But the deeper knowledge remained sealed. The truly transformative understandings that could reshape human consciousness itself, those would wait for future generations, for Michael's children perhaps, or their children. The ancient intelligence had shown patience across billions of years. Humanity could afford patience across centuries. Marcus had retired officially, but remained active in mentoring young scientists. His heart was holding, sustained by purpose and the joy of watching others discover what he had spent a lifetime pursuing. He called Sarah every week, checking in, sharing observations, reminding her to live as well as work. Yuki had taken over as principal investigator at Goddard, leading the next phase of observations. James had founded a company developing the clean energy solutions, ensuring they reached the developing world first. Elena was back at MIT, training a new generation to approach the cosmos with both rigor and wonder. And Sarah had found balance. Still working, still passionate about the discoveries unfolding daily, but no longer consumed by them. She had learned, finally, what Tom had tried to teach her. That life was in the living, not just in the discovering. The sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in colors that rivaled any nebula. Michael returned from the beach, sandy and exhausted and happy. Emma wrapped him in a towel, and they all sat together watching the stars emerge. "Grandma," Michael asked, "are they still watching us?" Sarah smiled. "Always. The universe remembers. And now, so do we." Above them, at the edge of observable space, the anomaly pulsed with patient light. A reminder and a promise. Humanity had found its place in a cosmos far stranger and more wondrous than anyone had imagined. The journey was just beginning. And that was exactly as it should be.